Hi, this is Mrs. Hanson, your online psychology instructor, and you're in chapter 4 now, which is about states of consciousness, uh, being awake, being asleep, dreaming, hypnosis, drug use. There are lots of interesting topics about altered states of consciousness in chapter 4. I'd like to talk to you right now about dreaming. While science can measure your brainwave states while you're dreaming, and we can monitor what's happening to your body physiologically while you're dreaming, there is no way to 100% scientifically accurately interpret your dream meaning. And we're not even sure that all dreams are meaningful. There's a couple of different theories about dreaming in your book. But the first one to draw attention to the possible importance of dream symbolism is, of course, Sigmund Freud, who called the storyline of your dream, you know, when you're telling a friend a dream or a family member your dream, you're saying, well, I was here and then this weird thing happened and then suddenly I was someplace else. That storyline is called the manifest content. And Freud would listen to his patients on his office couch, talk about their dreams, and he would sit behind them because he didn't want to be a distraction when his patients were talking. And it is kind of amazing when you give people an undistracted environment in which to just talk freely and in a stream of consciousness way. They do end up bringing up really important things. And so in telling their dreams, Freud thought there might be uh, symbolic indicators of meaningful emotional issues that are bubbling up from the unconscious during the dream state. Freud's symbolism was kind of limited to his psychoanalytic theory. And there was, you know, some sexualized symbolism, you know, that he focused on. But I'd like to introduce you to another dream symbolic theory from Carl Jung, Jung, Carl Jung. Maybe you've heard of Jungian psychology? Well, Jung knew about Freud's psychoanalytic theory of dreaming, the symbolic meaning of dreaming, and he took it a little further. He didn't like the limitation to the childhood experiences and working out emotional conflicts in that strictly Freudian realm. So he is responsible for drawing our attention to more universal themes of dreaming, and the term archetype is his term for referring to these universal symbols like giving birth, dying, uh, facing fear, the beginning and end of different relationships, struggling, becoming the hero. And so it wasn't as restricted as Freudian symbolism. And even though we don't know for sure, when we're hitting on accurate symbolic meaning for a dream, the dreams that are worth thinking about are the dreams you can't let go of. The dreams that keep recurring dreams for sure, but the dreams you can't let go of, the dreams you keep thinking about after you've had them. And there's something that tells you this dream is important for some reason, but it's really hard to see the symbolism maybe on your own. What I'm going to tell you is that when therapists try discussing with you the meaning of your dream, and by the way, the therapist cannot, you know, like a recipe book, open a reference book and look up the meaning of your dream. People like to think that's true with books like dream dictionaries. Here's 1,000 dreams interpreted. Well, these are very generic and written very generally like horoscope language so that you could get some ideas, but it's not like a recipe where you can just open it up and find the interpretation of your dream. But I'm going to tell you that the most important element of your dream, if you want to think about your dreams and try finding a symbolic connection to your real life, is the emotion experienced in your dream, or emotions experienced in your dream. There are very common dream themes, like running away from something or someone, fleeing danger. Those are anxiety dreams. And for instance, if something's chasing you, it's a symbolic representation. Maybe it's a deadline that's chasing you, but in your dream it's represented as a thing, monster, or person. People dream that they're flying. Flying could be experienced emotionally in the dream as a freedom kind of experience, a joyful experience, or it could be, again, that you're fleeing something by flying. You're trying to get away from something. Anxiety dreams are very, very common. You might have a dream that you're naked in front of a group where you have to give a presentation, you know. Well, that's symbolically kind of like they're going to see right through me, that I don't have what it takes. I'm not prepared. You know, I'm not really up to this. They're going to see me vulnerable. It's a feeling of vulnerability. And so being naked in your dream just kind of represents symbolically your vulnerability. The emotions experienced in the dream is the most important aspect of the dream to think about when you're trying to interpret your own dream. So you want to write your dream down. You want to describe the setting, the characters, and the action. And when you're dreaming about other people, they may be representational of someone else. Not necessarily that you're dreaming about that person, but they could be representational of other people. Describe the emotions, describe the interactions that take place in the dream, describe the outcome, and very importantly, describe any links to recent life events or possible future events. You know, we have anticipatory anxiety about things that are coming up, and often our dreams are a vent for anxiety of that sort. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of student dreams that we've ended up talking about in my live classes, and how we've come up with some possible interpretations that the students who told the dream did find meaningful. They did feel that maybe we hit on some meaningful symbolic interpretation. And the dreamer is the only one who can say whether that possible interpretation is meaningful or not, obviously. It's kind of like when you put the clues together, you kind of have an aha moment. We call that an aha moment, where you go, oh, I see. So yesterday in class, my student helper shared a dream where she was about 7 years old when she had the dream, and this dream has stuck with her. Like I said, this is a dream that is important because she feels it's important. It's stuck with her. She has never forgotten this dream. And in the dream, she's walking on a road with her parents on one side and her older brother on the other, and they're walking down the road, and all of a sudden her brother disappears. He's not there any longer. Her parents also disappear. She has the sense that her brother has died. She's not worried about her parents, but she has the sense that her brother has died. And then after a period of anxiety about that, she hears her brother's voice just coming to her. And the brother says, I know I'm not there, but I am with you. I don't want you to worry. You're going to be okay. I'm still watching out for you. And then she woke up, and she was terrified that her brother had actually died. You know, at the age of 7, it really affected her. So she never could figure out, you know, what that dream meant. So we were talking about it, and all I can do is suggest possible symbolic links. The first thing you have to ask is, what was going on in your life at the time you had the dream. And so she said, well, my brother and I did used to walk everywhere together. And I said, well, how much older was your brother? And he was 3.5 years older than her. And so he was 4 grade levels above her. She started talking and realized that, oh, we walked to school, the same elementary school together. But then when I was about 7, he was ready to move on to middle school. And so he wasn't walking with me to school anymore. And he wasn't on the campus with me anymore. And I couldn't depend on him anymore when I was at school. So I said, well, is it possible that his death in the dream was symbolic of the end of this tight, close relationship that you had in life and in the school setting? He wasn't going to be there for you anymore in that school setting where you remained, and that he's kind of moved on to another stage in life. And every moving on kind of event in your life is a little death and a little rebirth. And so when we were talking about that, she just kind of opened her eyes and went, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes sense. So when you have that feeling, oh my gosh, that symbolically makes sense, then possibly you've hit on something that is helpful to you. She felt a sense of closure about that dream, finally, after all these years. Here she is, 21 or 20 years old, and she'd been troubled by this dream since she was 7. And she felt a sense of closure. Her brother was telling her, I'm not going to be with you every day anymore at school, so don't worry about it. You're still going to be okay. So dreaming about someone's death doesn't mean you want them to die necessarily. It reveals something about your relationship with them. Had another student who told a dream where she was standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and her toes were right on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and it was a mile straight down to the bottom of the canyon, and she would look over the edge, and then she would feel herself starting to lose her balance, and she was tipping forward, and she almost would fall over the edge into the Grand Canyon. And then she would kind of regain her balance, and she did that 3 times, almost falling over the edge and then regaining her balance. And then she said she saw something floating up from the bottom, and it rose up and then stopped right in front of her face, almost like she was looking in a mirror. And it was a balloon that had a clown face on it. So she says, what the heck could that mean? I said, well, we have no idea. We're discussing it as a class. I said, you're going to have to share with us what's going on in your life. And she says, well, I'm supposed to be getting married in a couple months. And it struck me as odd that she said, supposed to be getting married? I said, what do you mean you're supposed to be getting married in a couple of months? And she says, well, I've already called it off 3 times. Immediately, bingo, I'm thinking, okay, symbolically, almost falling over the edge was, and then pulling back, that was her calling off her wedding. She almost went through with the wedding. No, she didn't. She called it off. She almost went through with the wedding. No, she called it off. The first thought I had was, I want to call her fiance and tell him to run, because she really doesn't want to get married to him. But, and then of course the students wanted to know about the clown balloon stopping right in front of her face. And most of the students said, that must be the fiance. She's making a fool of him. And I said, well, that is possibly one interpretation. I said, but how about this? The fact that it stopped right in front of her face, like she's looking in a mirror, I think is symbolic, could be symbolic in that she's going to look foolish if she calls it off again, but she's also going to be foolish for going through with the wedding. She's kind of foolish either way. I said, well, why did you call off the wedding 3 times already? And she says, well, I don't think I really want to get married, but I already have the dress, and my parents have paid, for a lot of things already. And I to myself, I said, she needs to face, her dream is telling her something, right? Her dream is saying, look at reality, face up to it. You really don't want to get married. You're going to look foolish either way, but just face reality. Now, I can't say that's scientifically proven, accurate interpretation, but does it make sense? She had an aha moment. She said, oh my gosh, that kind of makes sense. Another student who was a male said he had a dream that he was climbing a building, kind of like King Kong climbed the Empire State Building, only he had Wolverine claws when he was climbing the building, but he wasn't his human self. It was him, but he was a cow or a steer, a male cow. So he was a steer, and he's climbing this building, this very tall building. And he says at first he was alone, and it was easy climbing, but then it got crowded. There were other cows with claws climbing the building, and they started crowding in on him, and he thought they were going to knock him off the building, and he felt this sense of urgency that he had to get to the top before the other cows. And so he says, what in the world could that mean? I said, well, we don't know. We have to ask about the context of your life, what's going on in your life. And so I said, what's happening? And he says, well, I'm going to be transferring to Fresno State. I'm graduating from COS at the end of the semester. And I said, well, that's great. Congratulations. I said, what's your major? He said, ag. And immediately it's kind of like, oh. So I said, what are your thoughts about that? What are your feelings about that? And he says, well, I think it's probably going to be a lot harder than COS. I'm a A student here at COS, but I don't know if that's going to be enough at Fresno State. It's probably going to be a lot more competitive. I might have to work a lot harder. Suddenly, to me, the symbolism of climbing your way to the top, and there's competition all around you. That cow's going to reach the top before me. The cow represents ag, probably, I'm thinking. We can't say for certain, but again, this student had I see, that kind of makes sense. That's when you feel you've made a meaningful symbolic connection. So I just want to leave you with these thoughts because it's not a science, interpreting dreams, it's an art. And you're learning a lot about sleep and dreams and hypnosis and so on and so forth in Chapter 4. So I thought it might be interesting for me to share these examples of dream interpretation with you. If you want to know more, I recommend that you research Carl Jung and his theory of symbolism and archetypes. It's fascinating, fascinating stuff. Okay, have fun with Chapter 4.